Well, kia ora, good morning everybody. Can I just say firstly a big thank you to Peter for sponsoring this event and for everything that you do with Woolworths. We really do appreciate it. Can I just acknowledge Mayor Campbell-Barry to see his news that he's no longer running in October, but to thank him very much for his public service out in the hut. He's been a great partner with central government over a number of years, and we wish you very well for your future as well. But before I really get into it, can I just acknowledge Simon and all of the team here at the Wellington Chamber and just say thank you so much for advocating for business. This is an awesome city. This is a city that I came straight out of university to work for Unilever. My wife Amanda taught at Queen Margaret as a primary school teacher. I worked down in Jackson Street, Petone. We bought our first house here in Nio. This is an amazing city, and it has so much awesome potential. And I want to say to all of you as business leaders in this city, thank you for what you do, because you are truly the lifeblood. Business is the lifeblood of New Zealand, and we thank you for your leadership in difficult times, leading your organisations with vision and passion and your energy and your ideas. And Simon's exactly right. We come from a pretty simple construct that there is politics, political leaders, there are business leaders, and there are community leaders. We have complementary but different roles, but we all need to work together as equals on the challenges, but also the huge opportunities that the city has, but also this great country of ours has as well. It is a real pleasure to talk to you this morning, and it comes certainly at a difficult time for the global economy, with rising rhetoric and escalating tariffs and the prospect, I think, of further retaliation to come. I had originally planned to take this opportunity to speak about the government's plan for economic growth, to create jobs and to lift incomes and to put more money into Kiwis' wallets, and I'll still touch on that. It is my government's top priority, and it frames just about every decision we take here in Wellington as we focus on improving the lives of all New Zealanders. But with the markets rocked and exporters facing uncertainty, I know there's one topic front of mind for many businesses and many households this week. And so this morning I do want to take some time to speak to those events and to make the case for free trade and the rules-based international order. As I said earlier, trade is the lifeblood of the New Zealand economy. And whether it's our incredible farmers and growers, our outstanding tourism industry, or our burgeoning tech sector, Kiwi businesses thrive when we compete on the world stage. And our success isn't an accident, and it certainly didn't happen overnight. Successive generations of trade negotiators and political leaders have invested in relationships offshore, and they've worked hard to complete deals, things like the CER with Australia, the China FTA, the CPTPP, and the more recent EU, UK, UAE and GCC FTAs. And business leaders have moved rapidly too, finding fresh opportunities for growth in emerging markets and developing outstanding products back home that put New Zealand on the map. And our rural economy in particular represents the very best, I think, of open and competitive trade, selling into difficult markets with no direct financial support and consistently coming out on top. And I could, and I so often do, speak at length about the contribution our exporters make to the domestic economy. But trade goes both ways. And yes, export growth will continue to be critical to improving New Zealand's economic prospects in the years ahead. But the removal of New Zealand's own trade barriers and our embracing of goods and services imported from offshore has also led to a major improvement in our quality of life in recent years. Our clothing is more affordable, our cars are more reliable, our diets are more diverse, and our holidays in Bali and Europe are a nice contrast to summers at the lake or at the beach. Free trade of goods purchased from offshore has also supported growth and productivity. And Kiwi exporters rely on the trucks and the tractors and the jet engines and the computers and the smartphones that we buy from overseas that make all of our businesses tick. And it's not realistic to expect that in a country of just 5 million people, we could make everything that we need here at home. Political leaders have tried that before in New Zealand, and frankly, it didn't end well. Older generations will remember well the efforts that we went to. Government imposed strict import controls and encouraged cars and televisions to be assembled here at home. And like today, conflict offshore occasionally helped to send prices spiralling, but the response looked very different. In the late 1970s, politicians imposed carless days. Some of you won't remember that, some of us remember it as kids, with stickers on your vehicle dictating which days you could drive to work and which days you caught a ride with a friend or just walked into town instead. There certainly was no work from home in 1979. And agriculture today, the backbone of our economy, back then was heavily subsidised and much less productive, much less diverse than the efficient and entrepreneurial sector that's thriving in New Zealand today. And so those failed policies weren't just foolish economics, they reflected the best efforts of political leaders to insulate New Zealand from an era of major social and geopolitical change. And history shows us that those best efforts were a mistake that required years of difficult choices and then very careful recovery. New Zealanders paid the price then, and I don't intend for them to do so again. Which I think brings us to today, because the events of recent days are certainly the most significant challenge to the rules-based trading system since the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was formed back in 1947. Action, reaction and response have certainly shocked financial markets. And as the Minister of Finance highlighted earlier this week, the direct impact on the New Zealand economy from the US tariffs announced last week is likely to be limited at around $900 million, or roughly 0.2% of GDP. But the second-order consequences of a region and a world retreating from trade and increasingly uncertain about its economic future will be much more significant, despite the welcome news of some de-escalation this morning. Now, I know for many businesses keeping an eye offshore, and for those New Zealanders certainly watching their KiwiSaver accounts, that can be incredibly confronting. The exporters I've spoken to over the last week remain incredibly buoyant and rightly confident in the quality of their products and their ability to navigate increasingly choppy waters. But for countries whose prosperity is underpinned by global trade, the months ahead will be challenging for their economic interests. And many commentators will see these events as just the next step in a longer-term trend towards economic security and national resilience as countries ensure themselves against emerging geopolitical interests. Others have gone further in recent days, declaring an end to the era of free markets, of free trade and of free people, and the rules-based international system that's underpinning it. For my part, I'm not ready to throw in the towel quite yet. Kiwis have worked way too long and hard to give up on the values and also the institutions which have seen our country and the region that we live in absolutely thrive. So for as long as I'm Prime Minister of New Zealand, we're going to keep making the case for trade as a cornerstone for our prosperity. Yes, we are a small country, but stature has never been a barrier to our success. If you look back and take the P3, it was a proposed trade agreement which began life under negotiation at APEC between New Zealand, Singapore and Chile in the early 2000s. And three small countries practicing what we preach and doing everything we could to create opportunity for our people through trade. And today that agreement lives on as the CPTPP and covers a dozen countries, including New Zealand and Australia, Canada, much of Asia, and most recently the United Kingdom. In total, that's roughly 15% of global economic activity, or $13 trillion US. A long way from where we started just as three small countries having an idea 20 years ago. And the United Kingdom might be the most recent accession, but I expect that they certainly won't be the last. And New Zealand will continue to work, and I will continue to work with like-minded countries to promote free trade as a path to prosperity and to explore the role of the CPTPP in strengthening that vision. One possibility is that members of the CPTPP and the European Union work together to champion the rules-based trade system and to make specific commitments on how that support plays out in practice. My vision is that that could include action to prevent restrictions on exports and efforts to ensure any retaliation is consistent with existing rules. Collective action and a collective commitment by a large portion of the global economy would be a significant step towards preserving free trade flows and protecting supply chains. Clearly, though, efforts at collective action won't be enough to support New Zealand's economic interests. And as Prime Minister, I have a responsibility to do everything that I can to further bolster the existing rules-based order and to also further strengthen New Zealand's position offshore. And it's why I've put so much emphasis on deepening our relationships with our partners around the region, with visits into Southeast Asia, Korea and Japan, the United States and to India last month as we commence negotiations for a free trade agreement. It's why my government has worked so hard to close out fresh agreements with the UAE and the GCC that enable additional trade and also inbound investment. And it's why we hosted the Infrastructure Investment Summit in Auckland, making the case both for New Zealand as an outstanding place to do business and for the opportunity to enter into long-term infrastructure partnerships. It's also why on Monday this week the Minister of Defence and I launched the government's Defence Capability Plan that lifts defence expenditure to 2% of GDP and ensures that New Zealand pulls its weight for many years to come. And it's why later on today I'll be on the phone talking to world leaders, comparing notes on world trade and testing what we can do together to buttress the rules-based system. And it's also why I'll actually be heading to the United Kingdom later this month to meet with Prime Minister Keir Starmer to talk trade, to talk security and that geopolitical backdrop in Europe and also across the Indo-Pacific. I don't think we can make the case for New Zealand sitting here at home. We have to position ourselves as advocates both for our own economic interests and the institutions that underpin them. I'm very lucky to lead a government with so many ministers, frankly, dedicated to that task, whether that's our Foreign Minister, the Minister of Trade or the Minister of Defence, each of whom have already made a significant number of achievements supporting New Zealand's interests offshore. Now, back here at home, the volatility offshore is a fresh reminder of just how important our focus on economic growth will be in the coming years. And as I said recently at our investment summit in Auckland, New Zealand can be a fantastic shelter from the global storm and can attract a lot of investment. And that brings a serious opportunity from ensuring our business environment is as welcoming as possible for both investment and growth. And I think we're making serious inroads into that task over the last 16 months. Earlier this year, Minister for Economic Growth Nicola Willis published our government's Going for Growth agenda. And that is our blueprint, our plan, which outlines a range of actions that we are taking to get New Zealand's economy moving and to realise its vast potential. Yes, things are getting better. Yes, we're turning the corner. We don't just want to watch a recovery, we want to shape the recovery so that we can realise the great potential that sits here in New Zealand. So each of those actions fits into one of 5 pillars that we have identified as critical to lifting economic growth and improving New Zealanders' standard of living. First is developing talent and building a world-class education system. Secondly, encouraging innovation, science and technology. Third, introducing more competitive business settings. Fourthly, promoting global trade and investment. And finally, delivering infrastructure for growth. And across each of those pillars, we have our ministers focused and working day and night to drive through reform, whether it be in transport or tourism or aquaculture or construction, advanced aviation, mining, energy, agriculture and also horticulture. And in just the last few weeks, we have presented our plans to also replace the Resource Management Act, to fix our broken health and safety laws and to make nation-shaping investments like the Northland Expressway. We've introduced the fast-track regime, streamlining the consenting process for projects of regional and national significance. And we're rewriting the Overseas Investment Act so that major investments from offshore are consented faster and more reliably. We're also tearing down the barriers to fresh investment in renewable and non-renewable energy by repealing the oil and gas ban and ushering in new consenting rules for wind and solar and hydro and geothermal so those projects get built faster and quicker and we get that cleaner transition happening faster. And we're doubling down on our efforts to showcase New Zealand to the world, promoting our tourism and our international education sectors offshore so that we can attract even more people to spend their money here. And I know there's a lot more that we can do. Growth has now returned, and certainly, as I said, the economy has turned the corner. But our reform agenda will need to continue at pace for us to outrun the challenges to growth facing us now from offshore. So I think, in conclusion, the challenges to the rules-based international order are intense, and the strategic environment my government has inherited is more difficult than it has been for many years. For New Zealanders who grew up watching events unfold in Europe and the Middle East, it will be confronting to watch strategic competition and the deterioration of the rules-based trade come to our own neighbourhood here in the Indo-Pacific. But the response for New Zealand cannot be retreat. New Zealanders are at our absolute best when we are faced with adversity, and we thrive when we compete on the world stage. And to quote my friend, the Foreign Minister, this isn't our first rodeo, as he likes to say. Our export sector is certainly jam-packed with incredible, talented, sharp New Zealanders who make great products, compete with anybody in the world, and they can create jobs here at home while they do it. Farmers, growers, winemakers, startups from all around the country investing in our nation's future because they have the confidence that better days lie ahead. So I'm certainly not ready to call time on the rules-based trading system, and I'm not ready for New Zealand to give up on our efforts to advocate for it on the world stage. We're not in this alone. The same institutions that have served New Zealand so well for so long also underpin the prosperity of so many of our friends and partners around the world, many of whom are also continuing to make that case for free and open trade in recent days. My government will keep making the case overseas, here at home with a strong voice and a consistent message. Free trade works, it lifts incomes, it creates jobs, it builds partnerships, and it secures peace. And I think that's worth fighting for, and I'm up for that fight, and I hope all of you in this room are as well. So again, can I say thank you for being here this morning? Can I say thank you to Ministers Watts and Upston and others that are all here? I thank you for the work that you're doing, and we look forward to partnering with you, hearing your ideas to get the barnacles off our boat so that we can go even faster and get economic growth secured and realise the fantastic potential that sits in this awesome country of ours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister. I gather you're able to take a few questions.
Absolutely, yep. Can you say your name and what your business is, and then let's get into it. Try and ask a question, not a statement, so we can get through more of it.
My name is Sarah Lang from Becker. We are a 100-year-old.
You are an awesome company.
New Zealand founded.
And you are way too modest.
Owned business. Prime Minister, in an increasingly protectionist global environment, how is your government balancing the benefits of free trade, but also with the need to protect and grow New Zealand businesses?
I think you can do both. You know, the reality is a small, agile nation in a world of 8 billion people in 195 countries, and us sitting here in New Zealand with 5 million people on a good day, is that we can actually go out in the world and we can find rich seams of gold of consumers, of distribution outlets, of countries, of regions within countries where there is huge opportunity and demand for our New Zealand products and services. I was very struck coming through some of the challenges we faced in tourism around the 2011-2012 period, how actually with better targeting and understanding of who your customer is offshore, of where you make margin, your better improved route to market, all that sort of knowledge of local markets, how you can target wealthy consumers that are largely often recession-proof and that won't be impacted by some of the tariff environments. And we're seeing that with some of our exporters, for example, into the US. Yes, they're facing a 10% baseline tariff, but yes, when I talked to them over the last week, they're still incredibly confident because they know who their customer is over there. They've got really good targeting going on and they can extract the gold out of those markets and bring that back here at home. So I think the reality is that if you think about the period since World War II, you know, New Zealand and the world, frankly, has been on a massive, massive economic, probably the biggest economic progress we've seen in the history of mankind. And that has been a function of actually having this rules-based system in place where people have been lifted out of poverty and actually been able to move into middle classes and actually have more choices and options about how they get to live their lives. So I think we can do both. I think we can be advocating for global trade. We can also be building more resilience here at home at the same time. I think there's sort of, if you ask me to zoom out, and I've said this before publicly in India recently, is that we're seeing a world shifting from rules to power. We're seeing a world move from economy to security. You can't have prosperity without security. The Ukraine crisis has shown us that example, where people have had huge amounts of economic pain and suffering in Western Europe, Africa and throughout Southeast Asia because of that conflict. But the other piece is we're moving from efficiency and global supply chains, lowest costs, to actually also having to build resiliency within our countries as well. And that's why our government is so focused on investment in infrastructure, because we need to be able to build more roads and more schools, more hospitals, more of everything, frankly, given the deficit that we've got. So I think we can do both, and I think New Zealand has demonstrated that actually the people of New Zealand do well under the international trading-based system. 1 in 4 of our jobs are tied to trade. The companies that export pay their workers higher salaries and incomes as a consequence, and that's a good thing. So I think it's an and, not an or. Right. Yes, sir? We'll get a microphone to you. Feel free to do karaoke or ask the question as you wish, so it's all good. Or TikTok video.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. I'm Roger Somerville. I'm working for Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, awesome.
We're the cloud computing part of the company most people have heard of, Amazon.
Yeah.
We've been in New Zealand over 10 years, and later this year we're planning to launch what we call a cloud region in Aotearoa, New Zealand. That's a $7.5 billion investment for us,
Yeah.
so we're really excited about that. My question is, What role do you think the technology sector should be playing in the economic growth, in going for growth? What can we do differently or more? What do you want from us?
Yeah, that's a great question. Firstly, what an awesome company, and I've seen your work all around the world, and thank you for the investments that you're making here in New Zealand as well. It's why it's one of the 5 pillars, embracing more science, technology and innovation. If you look at what's been going on, we've often been selling a lot of commodity products, and we need to get our R&D ecosystem working so that we can add more value to the products and services we're selling so we can actually generate higher returns. I think there's huge advantage in embracing a lot more technology into New Zealand. If you think over the last 30 years, we've had low levels of productivity, economic productivity. We're all working incredibly hard. We're some of the hardest working people on planet Earth, but we haven't been able to lift our collective living standards in part because I think technology is absolutely critical in embracing more of it to actually improving our economic outcomes. If I look at I remember looking at it a few years back, if I looked at the bottom 10% of New Zealand's small, medium enterprise companies, and I looked at the top 10%, the top 10% are 7 times more productive than the bottom 10%. And you ask the question, why is that? And you'll actually find out that the top 10% have adopted 3 or 4 cloud-based platforms as a result of embracing more technology and are able to jump from one curve to another curve of efficiency and productivity as a result, grow and expand, and obviously that's a good thing. You look at the story of Ireland, which was 75% as wealthy as New Zealand. We've got the Irish ambassador here. She's heard me say this before. But it was 75% as wealthy as New Zealand. Now it's twice as wealthy as New Zealand. A lot of that story is good education, embracing science, technology and innovation as a result. I think the power for technology to disrupt and challenge and change the way we deliver government is profound. And I've also asked Judith Collins, who's the head of our public service minister, but also I've made her Minister of Digitising Government, because actually if we could get government to think like a large service organisation, that it has customers, why couldn't a 32-year-old mum of 2 be able to type in AI, just like we can on ChatGPT, what entitlements am I entitled to, and we actually deliver that service to her. And it would change the mentality of our public service and our government to think about the public as customers and their experience interfacing with government. So I just see huge upside, and that's why it's one of the 5 big pillars. There's things we practically need to do on encouraging more startups and getting some of those settings right. I think the big focus is on research and development, which I've asked Shane Retty to lead, to get the universities, the institutes and the R&D happening in businesses more joined up as an ecosystem. But we've got to, through science, technology, innovation, improve productivity and also innovate and get higher value products and services to sell the world. So, yeah, it's very exciting. And when you also think in your world of data centres, we've got 88% renewable electricity. We're probably one of the top 5 countries in the world. You think about the huge geometric increase we're going to need in electricity and capacity. That's why we want to double the amount of renewables in a very short period of time. That's why we've got the fast track consenting in place to get more solar, wind and hydro and geothermal built. That's why we're doing experiments on supercritical geothermal with Shane Jones and others. We just need to turbocharge all of that. Because as you know, the energy need is massive, and actually there's an opportunity for us, as Simon Watts and I've talked about before, of almost sort of exporting clean data through data centres based here at home, able to export out to the world as using clean energy. So the opportunities are pretty profound. That's where I need you guys as business people to step up, because we can create the conditions for the growth, but I can't do the growth. That's where you guys come in with your passion and energy and determination and ambition and aspiration and positivity and can-do to go get that job done. And that's why we've got to work together. The ideas aren't going to come from our own bureaucracy. They're going to come from people like you. We can create the conditions, and then you go up and go smack it, and make it happen. Yes, ma'am. Talofa.
My name is Isidro Rafaele, multifaceted diamond, co-founder, director, head of AI of Fiberfale. Thank you. My question to you, Prime Minister, is...
Can I just say, I love the energy at this time of the morning.
Thank you.
You are a dynamo. I love it.
You. Well, I am from the place of champions, Cannons Creek, Porirua. Yes. Lovely. So my question is, as a social entrepreneur and a business leader as well in our community, we talk about all this amazing, we do the growing, you set conditions. In my world, in a world where there is still digital inequity, what is the government doing to prepare the future of work? as business leaders, we all have to, make sure that our people are set and ready for the future.
Yeah, good
but
question.
from my view, and from my beautiful view, I can see that Aotearoa is not ahead of the AI curve. The extension of the digital divide is the AI divide.
Yeah,
so
well
what
said.
is your government doing to enhance the future workforce of Aotearoa? I know you know that the future is young and brown, but also I want to know from you, and just like you said for us, I don't want statements, I want solutions. But right now, right here,
All right,
I would love to hear from you now.
I
Whaftai te lava.
Well, firstly, you're awesome, and you're the kind of people we need getting things done in this country, which is awesome. So can I just say, look, there are a heap of high-paying jobs that are available in the world, and they're going to keep coming to New Zealand if we want them. And we have to make a decision right now whether we want to set our kids up for success to be able to access those high-paying jobs or not. And here's the deal. We have, when we came to government, I think 55% of our kids were not in school with regular school attendance. The problem with that is by the time they reach 16, they've lost one whole year of education already. The second challenge we've got is by the time our kids get into year 9, going into high school, half of them are not at the standard they need to be at on reading. And sadly, 80% are not at the standard they need to going into year 9, the old third form, on mathematics. So how on earth are we supposed to get people who can embrace AI, be the engineering leaders that we need to build 4-lane highways from Auckland to Whangarei and across much part of the country, or have future agri-tech and innovators and entrepreneurs, right? So that's why education for me is job number one. And I since I've come to politics just 4 years ago, it's the thing that I worry about and I will wake up in the middle of the night thinking about. I'm a kid whose parents left school at 15, 16. They had me young parents, awesome parents, but they wanted me to get an education. I got a great education. It served me really well. I was able to go out in the world and compete in Australia and London and Chicago and Toronto and New York in the business sense, and stand up and stack up against those kids that I had to compete with from those different countries as well. We have to make a decision right now, and I think many of you in this room are hugely influential. We have to get our kids to school. Job number one. If you've got a loved one, a caregiver, a guardian, you've got kids in your life, they have to be in school. And then we have to get them achieving because they go together. If you're a 13-year-old showing up at high school and you read like an 11-year-old, no wonder you don't want to go to school. So academic achievement and school attendance go together. So let's get the basics done right, and let's really go back to basics and deliver that well, so that when we get the platform in place, our kids can go off and do more science, technology, engineering, mathematics that we need them to understand, so that they can get out and do the AI opportunities that exist there. So there is high-paying jobs, but if we're having the same conversation in 10 or 20 years' time and we haven't done our job collectively as business, as community, as government, and getting kids to school and getting them well educated with the basics done well, they ain't going to be able to realise those higher-paying jobs that are there, and they'll go to other places, and we don't want that happening. So that would be a practical. That's what my government's doing. That's why we've put structured literacy, one way, same way, every day, teach kids to read one way, support our teachers to teach that consistently. We've trained half our year 0 to 8 teachers already. We've got another half being trained this year. This year, on the back of the 80% not meeting where they need to be on mathematics going into year 9, we've actually put in place a really accelerated new maths curriculum. It's putting huge pressure into our education system, but we're trying to get reading and mathematics done well so that we got the foundational skills so kids can go and get educated further on top of that platform.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I'm not sure we could top that.
I love this man's got a vest on and he's probably the sharpest looking dude here today, so let's get a question from him.
Morena PM. I'm not sure how a dour Scotsman can follow a lady from Cannons Creek with that energy, but I'm here supporting the elders that have made New Zealand what it is today.
Yeah.
And aged care is a sector that could do so much more, but needs that critical infrastructure investment that you talked about. And securing and delivering on that has been a real challenge. Moving to a point of crisis where those elders are actually going to really struggle to find a place to live and that they can call home. So in your 5-pillar model, where do you see the aged care sector fitting, and what do you think its future will look like? Kia ora.
Yeah, look, I think, we want to build out the world's best country, right? I mean, that's really our goal. I mean, you look at it and say, we're bang smack in the middle of the Indo-Pacific region. We have abundant natural resources. All around the world you're seeing grumpy populations in an age of disruption, and as a result social and democratic institutions being sort of unwound or weakened. But that's not the case here in New Zealand. And importantly, we have incredibly talented, smart people. So there should be, I start from the starting point of there should be no excuses for why we can't build the best small advanced country on earth, period, right? Let's just start there. So then you say, well, how do you do that? You've got to get your economic engine moving, and that's what I've been talking about with that 5-point plan. About those are the 5 things that I think when you look at how do you create more wealth for people, how do you lift collective living standards, it's those 5 pillars that I talked about to drive economic productivity. On the social space, what we actually have to deal with is the underpinning organising thought needs to be this notion of social investment. And that's what Bill English started with, the theory of that under the previous national-led government. But actually it never got into the bloodstream of the place. And that's why I keep saying we have to partner, as 3 actors in civil society, government, business, community, working together on all of that. We have to work hard, and Louise Upson's doing some great work on that, getting the cash out of the bureaucracy and out to community organisations that can secure better outcomes for our people, whether it's in aged care, whether it's in a number of social services across the piece. Government historically does not a good job of that. There are innovators, social entrepreneurs that are doing incredible work in our social services, tackling really difficult, challenging problems, social problems that actually have a lot of overlay. People in emergency housing also have school and have housing insecurity, but they also then have kids that are bouncing in and out of schools and are really challenged. Now you've got to get to the root cause of what are those issues, and let's try and get some innovation into trying to deal with those problems in a different way versus carrying on doing everything we've done in the same way for 30 years. So I think social investment becomes the model for our social thinking, and then with respect to environment, it's about emissions reduction, as the organising thought. So in the aged care sector, yes, there are real challenges, and when you look at I looked at this over the last couple of years, you look at the outlook for where it's going and the number of beds that are coming out of the system, and you get into what nurses are paid in in aged care versus in the general hospital system versus in the community sector. We've got to work our way through all of those issues. So there are real challenges in aged care, and we've got to be able. But I think we've got to get again government and businesses in this case, government and community in this case, working together on who's best to deliver and secure improved outcomes. And it's often businesses and it's often community organisations, and government's got a role to play for sure. I'm not abdicating from that, but it's just working together will actually get that sorted. So a lot to do in aged care. I hope you get a chance to meet with Simeon Brown, our new health minister. I'm sure he'll take your meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Prime Minister.
Sorry, this gentleman's standing, so let's do one more. Sorry, this is much more interesting than the next few meetings I've got. Yeah. Thank you.
I was interested in your comments about the urgency of RMA reform and the timetable for it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So
the RMA has been, I think, one of the massive brakes on New Zealand's economic productivity. We have started off with something in the 1991. It's blown out to a 900-page piece of legislation. It just is a huge amount of red tape string that's just bound this country up. And I'll give you an example. How long do you reckon it takes to build a 3 to 4 bedroom standard house in New Zealand? Anyone got any ideas? Just think about that task and what would be involved with that. How long does it take can-do Kiwis to do something like that? It takes 19 months. 19 months to build a standard 3 to 4 bedroom house in New Zealand. That house is often inspected 15 times by councils, and our building costs, forget the land costs for that same house being built in Australia is 50% higher. Now, part of that is resource management and the fact that resource management and consenting has doubled, the time has doubled on it, and time is money. And so I just think we have to strip this thing down. That's why we put the fast track in place to put the defibrillators on the system and to try and shock the system so that we break ourselves out of this paralysis that we've been in, that we just do this stuff to each other consciously or unconsciously. So we stopped the previous RMA reforms that the previous government did. We unwound that very quickly. We've put in place fast track so that we prioritise economic growth both regionally and nationally to get things done and built, because we've had some pretty perverse stories of great things that help local communities be able to create opportunity and yet they get rejected. And then we're going to have a much more stripped down, simple RMA reform, and we'll have our first reading of that bill in the House by the end of this year. We're not taking 10 years to do this thing. I'm sorry, but the days of talk and lots of discussion and debates and endless meetings for years and years and years has to come to an end, and we have to get moving and get some things done. So RMA reform will be here. Chris Bishop knows he's got to deliver a bill in the House at the end of this year. Okay, well, can I just say in closing, I've been in this job 16 months, I've been in politics 4 years. I've got to tell you, we have an awesome country, people. We have an amazing country. Yes, it's been incredibly tough and incredibly difficult. We are turning the corner, and we now have an opportunity not just to watch a recovery take place, but we have an opportunity to actually shape this country and to think about the potential that sits in it and how we ultimately realise that for our people. How we collectively lift our living standards, how we better deliver for our most vulnerable people, and how we ultimately deliver on the environment aspects that we want to deliver as well. So please, don't ever give up on New Zealand. Don't ever give up on New Zealanders. We have an awesome future ahead of us. We have massive potential to realise, but we will only do that by the three actors in our society of community, business, government working together to realise the opportunities and to rise to the challenges that we face. So again, can I say thank you for what you do. Thank you for signing up for that vision, and let's get to work and let's get this job done. Thank you.